Today, things are gonna get a little sticky. On Sunday Gun Day. What's going on, everyone? Back with another episode of Stuff and Things, and today I'm a little skeptical about this one. I have shot a direct competitor to this gun, which was the Kel-Tec KSG, and to be honest, I'm really not a fan of that gun or weird tactical shotguns for that matter. I do own a Remington 870 tactical, and I like that more traditional style, but when it comes to the double magazine tubes and just the weird small compact designs, something about it just really isn't for me, but hopefully this thing will change my mind. So today we are taking a look at the UTS-15. The UTS-15 is a 12 gauge tactical shotgun from a Turkish manufacturer known as Utaş. It is chambered for 2.5, 2 3/4, and 3-inch shells and has a potential capacity of 15 rounds. The gun is fed through dual 7-round magazines with an automatic alternating or selectable feed. On top of the mag tubes you will find an integrated Picatinny rail, and in this case I have a Trijicon MRO mounted on top. The receiver is mostly comprised of polymer, and it features a spring-loaded shell feeding device, as well as a quick removable fire control housing containing the hammer, sear, and disconnector. The butt plate is fiber reinforced with a 1-inch energy absorbing recoil pad, and if this thing shoots the way I think it will, then that will definitely be much needed. Just by looking at it, you would think that the UTS is a heavy behemoth, but it is actually surprisingly light, coming in at just 6.9 pounds. The only real steel you will find on the gun is the rotary bolt with 3 locking lugs and the barrel with a muzzle threaded to accept Beretta style chokes. This thing was obviously designed with close quarter tactical situations in mind, so the whole package has an overall length of 28.3 inches. And one more thing that may seem hard to believe with all of the intricate looking design and everything, but you can actually field strip the UTS in just about 45 seconds with no tools required. So needless to say, this thing is very interesting, something that you might see out of like a futuristic movie. This is the FDE version, but I think this would be really cool if it came in white, almost like a Stormtrooper-esque type of gun. But aesthetics don't really mean much if this thing doesn't shoot well, so let's load up both magazines and shoot off a couple rounds, and then I will come back with a first mag impression. A couple quick notes: I have this thing loaded up with just some standard birdshot, and as you can see on the side here, the shells are blue peeking out through the magazine tube. It has a round count on the side so I can see how many are on each side. I currently have it loaded up with 14. I did not put one in the chamber yet. And another thing, I have the Select Fire running just one magazine tube, so they should be feeding from this left side now. I'll run these 7 rounds and we'll see how it does. I also just threw this MRO on here this morning, so hopefully it's accurate, but we'll see. It is a shotgun. Click. Alright guys, back for my first mag impression. I know it is a little bit early to be saying this, but I think I already prefer this thing over the KSG. One of the main reasons being is that the barrel location keeps this thing lower and more in line with your shoulder than the KSG. On that shotgun, it is basically like this, with the magazine tubes on the bottom and the barrel riding on top of that. This sort of inverts that, keeping the barrel lower and more in line with your shoulder as this thing is up against you. Because of that lower barrel and the added weight of the shells riding on top of the barrel, when this thing recoils, it is a lot more linear and it does not have a whole lot of muzzle rise, which kind of surprised me. This butt pad also kept the recoil pretty damn manageable. I don't think that this thing will be hurting my shoulder anytime soon, and I have close to 100 rounds to go through today, so we will see what it does in the long term. The Select Fire worked as expected. As you can see, I have it over in the right position here, and there are still shells in this right magazine tube. Now, if I were to flip this to the other side, this magazine tube would be blocked off and it would only feed from the left side now. If I keep this thing in the middle, then it will alternate feed both left and right all the way through 14 rounds until it is completely empty. Part of that info about field stripping the shotgun would actually make it a lot easier to see the mechanism in here. You do have to put this selector in the position that you want before you actually load all of the rounds. So right now, I cannot flip this back over to the other side. If I'm loading birdshot on one side and buckshots or slug in the other side, I want to select the switch to the position that I want it in before I actually load this thing up. Now, speaking of loading this thing up, let me grab some shells. You will find both of these load doors on each side of the gun. You simply press down on this button and you will get the magazine follower in here. I push that out of the way, and then I'll grab my shells. Again, this is just standard birdshot, and load it up. That is 6 rounds here, as you can almost see on the side. You can sort of see the blue shells poking through here. And then the 7th round simply sits right inside of this door, close it up, and you're ready to rock. Now, ergonomic wise, there isn't a whole lot to be desired here. The grip does feel pretty nice. It might be a little bit too skinny for my liking up towards the bottom of the trigger guard. I do, however, like the finger groove that they put in here. I can really get a solid grip on this, and there's no way that this thing is jumping out of my hand just from the recoil. Everything else on the gun does feel kind of plasticky, especially the sound of the action. Like all of this fore end and everything is basically polymer. The only real metal that you'll find is like here on the doors, the bolt, safety selector, and then of course the barrel and the internals. That isn't necessarily a bad thing though, because when you look at this gun, if it was steel, it just looks like it would be super heavy. Luckily it is not, and it is on the lighter side, even loaded up. I really thought this thing was going to weigh a lot more than it actually feels. I do also like the long rail on top. The Trijicon MRO seems to be working just fine. I was at about a distance of maybe 20 yards there shooting at my steel with birdshot, so of course I'm going to land shots. You could also throw some flip-up sights on here if you are into that, or basically anything, because there is a ton of real estate up here. Now, instead of just taking this thing and shooting at steel all day, I brought some fun targets with me. We got some 2-liters here. Shout out to Hickok 45. I'm gonna go set these things up and then slow things down a bit. We'll have a little bit of fun today. All right, let's get sticky. Now I've got this thing loaded up with both birdshot and buckshot. Buck is on the left, birdshot is on the right. Both of these shells say that they are 2 3/4 inches, but if you compare them right next to each other, you can see that the buckshot shells are just a little bit longer, and if you shoot shotguns, you know that this is a pretty common thing. So because of that, I could only load 6 of the buckshot in this magazine, so I just made it even on both sides. Let's shoot at both of these targets. I have this set to alternating shot, so it'll pull one from each side, and then I'll be able to hopefully tell which is which. So as you guys could probably tell, I believe that it was pulling from the right magazine first, which was the birdshot. So birdshot was on my left target, buckshot was on my right. That's a pretty cool feature to have, especially since this is a tactical shotgun. Maybe you want to have it just set to a defense load on one side, maybe something like salt shot on the other. The possibilities are pretty much endless, and if you guys have never heard or seen Dragon's Breath rounds, you should check out this video right up here in the corner. Well, I figured I put my steel through enough today, so now we got some super chill targets out here. Definitely not a sponsor of Sunday Gun Day. I'm gonna slow things down again, and hopefully we don't get too sticky. right, my shoulder is not going to appreciate this, but hopefully you guys will. We gotta do a full 15 round mag dump. I ruined it. I'm not doing that again either. All right guys, back for my final thoughts on the UTS 15. I did go back through the footage there to try to figure out what happened with that malfunction. I thought at first that I might have short stroked it, but I don't really think that I did. For some reason, it just didn't feed that next shell, but it wasn't too hard to just rack another one in and get back to work. Now I should start by going to address what I said in the beginning, that the recoil on this wasn't too bad thanks to this butt pad, and it still really isn't, but after almost 100 rounds of 12 gauge, that does take a toll after a little while, and I would not be surprised if I had a little bit of a bruise here tomorrow. Overall, this thing definitely changed my thoughts on tactical shotguns. I really only had traditional style like the Remington 870 and then the Kel-Tec in mind, but coming to this, I actually really do dig this UTS 15. Aesthetically speaking, this thing looks like it came out of the future, even though it is a fairly old firearm by now, but it does still look really cool, and I think there are a lot of customization possibilities that would make this thing even 10 times cooler. This is basically their standard model, but on the site you can get different options like an integrated light, which goes right into the front here. Underneath the fore end here is actually all hollow, so you run the cables underneath here right to this point. And then this little rubber piece will actually swap out for a button, so that way you can actuate a light or laser right here with your trigger finger. Now while we're right in this area, we might as well talk about the controls. Safety is ambidextrous, so you can get to it on both sides, which is nice. The trigger, really nothing to write home about. It was decent for a shotgun, but the one control that I do have a problem with is this back here. If you want to release the bolt, you have to take your hand all the way off the grip and hit this button back here on the stock. I guess it really isn't the end of the world. You could sort of hit it with your offhand if you're holding the gun up in the air, but I much prefer something like on a traditional Remington or Mossberg where you can get it with basically just your trigger finger or your thumb. While we're back here in the bolt section, it's also kind of a cool touch that they added a magnet to the dust cover. If the bolt is in its back position, this thing will not stay closed because there is a magnet on there. When the bolt is closed, the magnet sits right on the bolt, keeping everything nice and tight. The doors to the magazine where you load this gun at were a little bit tight at first, but over time it seems like they're starting to wear in. The tolerances on this thing are not the tightest in the world because it is a lot of plastic and polymer. However, these are metal, so I guess they are pretty tight for a good reason, because over time, when you manipulate these, they will probably break in. Other than that, I really don't have a whole lot to say, except I think this thing did change my mind on the whole weird design, intricate tactical shotguns. Purpose of use, you could definitely use something like this as a home defense weapon. Might be a little bit overkill, but hey, if you're protecting your valuables, your friends, your family, I don't think going overboard in this sense is too much. Now, one of the other downsides is that the MSRP on this thing, you're going to be looking to spend around $1,100 to $1,200. But if you have a nice FFL like my friends at Panda Tactical, they were able to get me this thing much cheaper, more in the price range of a Kel-Tec KSG. These aren't the most common guns in the world, but if you shop around a little bit, you should be able to find one around the same price. So now that's really all that I got. If you guys have any questions on the UTS 15, feel free to leave those in the comments down below and I will try to answer anything that's reasonable. And if you are new to this channel, consider clicking subscribe because I make new videos every week. That's going to be all for today. So as always, thank you guys for watching and I will talk to you in the next one.